Greetings, everyone. Alex, my Cryptocast. Today in the hot seat, we have Ben Keady. He's the host of the Wealth Crypto Podcast. I'm going to shill your show for a moment. I do think you've always had a nice mix of guests on your podcast, from players in the TradFi space and others in the blockchain space. We've seen some of the guests on your show, including, what was it, like Lex Sokolin with Consensus, Rick Edelman with DAC-FP. So yeah, love the mix of guests you always have on your show. So I'm getting the shilling out of the way now instead of saving it for the credits.
You can keep going.
Yeah, must be nice, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're today we're gonna, as always, demystify Web3, talk about tokenization, Bitcoin ETFs, all that fun stuff. Before we start conversating, can you explain your background a little bit and what got you into Web3?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me, Alex. I really appreciate being here. Like we were talking about a little bit offline, I've done 47 podcasts of my own. So being on one for the first time is cool. It's a little bit different experience, but yeah, let's see. I mean, as far as me goes,
Should have brought some champagne to celebrate this occasion.
It is Friday, so soon enough. My background. So, I guess if you start at the beginning, like at the very beginning, a lot of my financial services experience really comes from living through the 2008 crash with my parents and the subsequent aftermath of that. The short story is we lost our house and I went to college and was like, well, how do I never do this again? Right. So I figured, let's just go learn about finance. That should be a good thing to do. I was like, that seemed the most practical way to avoid getting into financial calamity is just to actually go learn about it. So that's what I did. And then after school, I got into wealth management and did a variety of things in wealth management for about 5 years. Got kind of chewed up and spit out by the wealth management industry, which is not uncommon if you're a young person at like 22 going in and trying to manage millions of dollars. It's a tough thing to do, but I'm grateful for the experience. I saw a lot. I worked retail wealth. I worked institutional wealth. I did pure fixed income sales. So I kind of bounced around and got a lot of experience for that first 5 years or so. And then ever since then, I've been on the technology side of the house. So I have worked a variety of wealth technology companies, fintech companies. Currently, I'm at a very big global provider of like infrastructure type services. They're called SS&C. They are also in the tokenization race, which I'm sure we'll get to, but so that's where I sit currently. And then as far as the podcast goes, the podcast is really just a curiosity for me. So I got introduced to crypto in like the summer of 2017 and, was intrigued by it in a variety of ways, but didn't really jump into the industry a little bit more until really when I started the podcast and started just getting to know people and seeing what's going on in the space. So let me stop there.
No, that's great. The 2008 financial crisis, even for me personally, I think it led to my interest in Bitcoin and blockchain technology. I was introduced to it in 2013 during the bank balance in Cyprus. And, you and I and the world, we've lived through this 0%, near 0% interest rate environment, which is, unprecedented in the United States. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but we've seen a lot of money printing the past decade. I think that's what originally piqued my curiosity, just the excitement of a brand new financial system. I'm going down a rabbit hole here myself too. Yeah. My bad.
No, there's like a million things to pick at there. Crypto is a big place. And like, I guess where I came at it originally from is similar to you. The sort of central bank malfeasance and negligence and global money printing and like inflation, all these things coming together was really where I came at it from. If I think back, I was a bit of a gold bug before I really got into crypto. And for various reasons, I think Bitcoin is superior to gold. But
you can instantly transfer value as quickly and cheaply as an email.
Yeah.
Whereas,
that's a big one. I listened to, this is a plug for another guy, but Robert Breedlove, I don't know if you follow him on crypto Twitter, but he's a Bitcoin maxi guy. And if anyone wants like a really good breakdown of why Bitcoin, he's a good follow. But yeah, the Bitcoin thing is really kind of where I come at it from. can't believe that printing trillions of dollars out of nowhere doesn't matter. Like, however you come at it, I kind of think that printing trillions of dollars is going to impact us in some way. So,
Yeah,
the
Ray Dalio, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read a book he released a year or two ago about the changing world order. And he laid out basically how world reserve currencies change maybe on average, every 80 to 100 years. And he went back to literally the year 1500 and went through each
yeah,
cycle. And I think we are living through some very unprecedented times ourselves right now. And it's great that I think this new financial system we're seeing here, built on blockchain technology, is going to be the solution to everything we've seen these past few decades. Speaking of which, even I'm excited that the traditional finance people are finally getting in with the Bitcoin ETF. What's really nice about that exchange traded product is that it makes Bitcoin accessible to a wider audience. So now people can, gain exposure to Bitcoin from the convenience of their brokerage account without having to worry about actually custodying the asset. I know for, Web3 bugs, crypto bugs like you and I, we love the idea of self custody and yeah, just
yeah,
it's such a paradigm shift to, instead of relying on maybe a brokerage to hold your stocks or, a bank to hold your money, you can, using software, custody your own assets. But to be honest, there's a lot of personal responsibility involved with self custody. And I don't think self custody is necessarily for everyone. And I think this Bitcoin ETF is really going to give, everyday people the opportunity to gain some exposure in the space. And actually, I thought it was really interesting. Gary Gensler, the SEC chairman, I thought he made an interesting comment on CNBC after the ETF approval. He actually said, you probably saw it too. He thought it was really
yeah,
ironic that, you know, he actually said this Bitcoin ETF is going to lead to centralization, which is something, the creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, was against. So
yeah.
I thought it was really humorous that, the irony was lost on Gary Gensler there.
Well, there's a lot to kind of say about it. So, like, I'm kind of in, I think, a wait and see mode as far as the overall impact of the ETF on, adoption, however you think about it, whether it's just like market cap or actual use of foundational, values of crypto. So Gary's point about centralization is an interesting one that I've had people talk to me about on my show. Is just the nature of how an ETF works is you're just going to have you're going to have, maybe, I think we've got 10 to 12, maybe 13 Bitcoin spot ETFs currently. The way those ETFs functions is those financial institutions are the ones in the spot market acquiring Bitcoin. So I was actually doing a little research before we got on here. There's this guy on Twitter named Fred Krueger who put out this tweet about, or X, I guess, about that it's taken 30 days for 9 spot ETFs to overcome microservices Bitcoin holdings. So to Gary's point about centralization of Bitcoin, does it matter is going to be the question, because undoubtedly these ETF companies are going to hold very significant slugs, but what is the ultimate impact? Like, does it compromise the network and decentralization? Like, what really does it mean going forward? We'll
And
see.
and it's not the same as, again, self custodying and actually owning Bitcoin, which allows you to participate in the network,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So, like, if you're a retail investor, or even an institutional investor, which everyone's really curious about, if you own the ETF, you own basically a paper slip that, um, in theory, gives you access to the underlying, but in reality, these institutions are not going to take your underlying claim seriously unless you've got tens, hundreds of millions of dollars in their product. Like, if the state of California, like CalPERS pension fund, wanted to go and actually switch the ETF to physical Bitcoin outright, they could probably do that. But you as an individual person, you can't. So, like, again, going back to foundational principles, I think at least I would prefer people to actually just set up a Coinbase account or, set up a wallet, go to Uniswap and just buy it themselves. I think that
The
is,
user experience has been completely lacking. And,
yeah,
I will acknowledge this industry has made a lot of strides compared to, when 2013 and 2017. I mean, a lot of even OpenSea now, you're able to create a wallet with an email, which I think that user experience is really what, people are lacking. Because again, with self custody, there's no hot 24/7 hotline to
there's,
call to be like, "Oh,
there's,
I messed up one of the letters in my string of, my wallet address. I accidentally sent $1,000,000 to the wrong wallet address. What am I gonna do here?"
yeah,
And
I mean,
I know my mom, yeah, she'd probably prefer a Bitcoin ETF and not have to stress, you know?
yeah, no. And I think from the exposure standpoint, that like it's a mixed bag, right? I think it's kind of like in life, you're going to get nothing is going to be purely positive or purely negative. I think for retirees who want to maybe preserve their purchasing power relative to the dollar, I think Bitcoin is still going to make a ton of sense, even as an ETF, right? But if you get conspiratorial and think about like BlackRock and Vanguard cornering, the spot Bitcoin market, you can go down that road too. I mean,
I'm wondering when JP Morgan's gonna offer like a US Treasury related money market fund on an actual like public permissionless network like Ethereum. I know a lot of those major banks like JP Morgan right now are very siloed using these permissioned networks. But I think maybe they're probably waiting for the regulatory approval. I know JP Morgan reported in Bloomberg that there's around a billion transacted in JP Morgan coin every day just among their siloed network. But
sure.
are they going to follow the Franklin Templeton route and release, something on Stellar or Ethereum that everyone can access?
Yeah. The cynic in me says it's a matter of where the fees are, you know,
Yeah, there's
and
completely new business models being I think that's also why a lot of traditional companies have been resistant to adopting this technology because they have to rethink their whole business model, whether you're,
yeah.
Google or JP Morgan. We could I think maybe over time we may see banks taking on more of a role of being a software company instead of like a brick and mortar place where people go.
Oh,
And
I I hate Wells Fargo for that. I actually have to go to Wells Fargo this afternoon to deposit a check that is over our normal deposit limit. And
so
there's no way to do that without going into the branch. And, it's capital controls and various things, but it's just,
And I'm
yeah.
glad you brought up Wells Fargo because I feel like whenever yeah, checks, like, I feel like I'm too in, this bubble, this Web3 crypto bubble where, "Oh, I need to wait. Oh, it's the weekend, I have to wait for this $90 check. I have to wait a couple business days for this to clear." If I was using, Web3 right now, I can that it's just instantaneous, whether it's a token representing a piece of gold on the blockchain or a money market fund or just US dollar, I have it instantly. It's
Yeah.
just
It it should work that way. And,
culture shock.
the interesting thing about crypto and blockchain is that this like instantaneous settlement thing is starting to work its way through traditional financial markets. So we're in the process of moving from T plus 3 to T plus 1. So when you used to
Can
buy a
you
stock,
explain that actually a little more for our viewers?
yeah, yeah. So when you buy a stock on Fidelity or Schwab or wherever you buy a stock, historically you purchase the stock, you submit the order. It takes 3 days to actually settle historically. And what settlement means is that you finally have it in your account and you can either buy and sell it again. So there's been this, essentially 3.5, 4 day lag between when you buy to when you actually have it and own it outright. So financial services is now moving towards T plus 1 settlement. So in theory, it'll be about a day, 36 hours to fully settle.
And you're
Um,
saying tokenization could potentially make this instantaneous.
I
Will
mean, it
optimize
will.
liquidity.
It'll do a lot more than that. So, like, at least as far as big banks go, the use case in financial services is really hot around tokenization right now, which is just taking some asset and chopping it up into a million pieces. So it could be fine art, it could be a stock, it could be a piece of real estate. This is a big thing. The reason it's a big thing is because, particularly for non liquid assets, private investments, these things have never really been traded before. So if you're an investor in a private equity fund or venture capital, or maybe just like you own an apartment building or, a rental property, you can't really trade that thing, right? So there's no fractional ownership. There's no liquidity. Tokenization is going to make all that possible. So you could own a couple of, rental homes in like Tahoe, where I'm based in Northern California, and say you wanted, say you need a little liquidity and you wanted to, sell off a portion of what you own. That is going to be possible. I know JP Morgan is working on this right now. I mean, I know my company's working on this right now. So
Like you mentioned earlier, it's a race to tokenize everything. It's an opportunity. There's some wild statistics about tokenization out there as well. The World Economic Forum reported that $867 trillion can
yeah,
be tokenized. I can't even say that. I'm not used to saying numbers that high.
yeah.
You know,
Who was that? That was Larry, right? Larry Fink, right after the ETF got approved, he was at World Economic Forum talking about crypto and tokenizing everything. So
literally anything could have a token representation, whether it's, yeah,
yeah,
your identity, a piece of gold, like I mentioned earlier. I know
yeah.
you've seen the Boston Consulting figures. That's always paraded a lot in this industry. But yeah, even we've witnessed the tokenization of US treasuries increased over 600% last year alone. So I think we are seeing this general trend where everything will have a digital representation on the blockchain.
It certainly seems that way. I mean, of the use cases of last year, at least I talked about a lot. The stablecoin use case was pretty hot, particularly since inflation has been hot, obviously the last several years. And it's an interesting sort of marriage of TradFi and DeFi and sort
Mhm.
of what people want. So
Have
like,
you been following PayPal?
I know they have their own project. I haven't really seen much about what PayPal's been doing with it recently.
I I actually I love I think PayPal is a very unique case study to your point about how stablecoins, TradFi and DeFi are sort of merging under the stablecoin umbrella. So with PayPal, they're actually the 10th largest stablecoin by market capitalization right now. And you could actually go on Curve Finance. They actually have liquidity pools on Curve Finance, and
Okay.
the lending protocol Aave, their DAO is
Yeah.
actually making a vote on whether to allow PayPal stablecoin to have a liquidity pool. I believe that's worth, they're saying they want to deposit 10 to 20, yeah, 10 to 20 million in there in that lending pool. But it's just really wild to think about US publicly traded companies just embracing DeFi in the manner that, PayPal has done, even Coinbase for that matter. Which, on a side note, I feel like one of the largest winners of the Bitcoin ETF was Coinbase. Stat was it 9 out
Yeah.
of 11 of the ETFs they were custodying? Like, whoa.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. They won that one. By nature of being the only one, they did well there. But
There
we'll go
but
ahead.
what are you seeing with your guests? Do they bring up tokenization a lot, or, like, what are they doing with stable coins? Like, what are they planning on?
Yeah. I mean, the what I heard a lot last year, the big theme was exporting US dollars and treasuries globally on our side of the fence. So, for the Fed and the Treasury, there's a finite demand of US dollars in the US, but by nature of being, oh, whoa, how'd that
You have
happen?
confetti.
I know.
Oh, we're
It's,
celebrating your
yeah.
first time being on a show.
Who knew? Wow.
How is that
Didn't,
happening?
I guess it's like control command with like the air quotes.
Oh,
It's
I need to play
super
around with
random.
those.
Good to
That's awesome.
know. maybe I'll be careful about my air quotes, but yeah. So for the US government, like it's an interesting marriage of, you know, sort of finance and then, their regulatory sort of animosity towards crypto things, right? So historically, if you're in Argentina or, some other country that doesn't have a great local fiat currency, getting access to a US dollar is really hard. Like you couldn't just like go get one, even through like a traditional banking system. But now, like I had on Lisa Nestor from AirTM, which is an interesting platform, but one of their big use cases is basically global digital workers having an on and off ramp to convert local currency into some sort of US dollar stablecoin. And, if you're in Argentina and your purchasing power is decreasing daily, like you get paid, you switch, and then, you're in a much more stable, here we go,
Well,
Keady
I mean,
again.
when your country's experiencing over 100% inflation, the US dollar is very attractive.
For sure. So going back to the Treasury and the Fed and sort of interest rates and global macro, like if you can all of a sudden export treasuries to the world, to everyone through software, why wouldn't you? It's going to keep your borrowing costs down. Demand's going to shoot through the roof. Like it makes it really easy to get, US backed dollars somewhere.
I think that's especially important considering the de-dollarization trend we're witnessing, through
Yeah.
countries, let's say, involved in BRICS plus.
Mm.
Countries are, as you're probably aware, no longer using the US dollar to purchase oil or
Yeah,
whether, especially if you're China or Russia, but
for sure.
at
Yeah.
least to your point, we're able to export US dollar. There's still a market if we could tokenize the treasuries and put it in the hands of everyday people. Sort of to your point earlier about you could take any asset in the world and you can smash it into a million pieces, right? Through the fractional tokenization you were talking about earlier. I mean, I imagine now that if you're a farmer in a developing country that doesn't even have a bank nearby, thanks to software on your mobile phone, as long as you have internet, you could actually own a US Treasury. You could own a fraction of the Mona Lisa or a fraction of
Yeah.
real estate. I really think it's going to help actually lift a lot of people out of poverty. But
Yeah. I mean, you would hope so. The longer term view of all this that I think is again to be determined and going back to Bitcoin is, the US dollar is certainly the best of the worst as far as inflation goes, but we still have this $33 trillion overhang that I don't care what any strategist tells me. It's good. It's gotta matter at some
plus
point.
unfunded liabilities, which
Yeah,
is
it's
even
it
higher.
ultimately has to matter. So I think, for people to preserve purchasing power across time, you really need assets that are not easily replicated. So, gold historically, Bitcoin currently, real estate, commodities, hard assets. These are things I think you need to have exposure to because, I mean, our governments certainly are pretty good at spending money, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So, but yeah, I mean,
Not financial advice, but I agree.
well, yeah, on my podcast, there's a big asterisk at the front that
I love that
this is
disclaimer you have. Yeah.
this is not financial advice. Don't buy based on what I tell you. But yeah, oh
But
no,
yeah, a
shoot.
lot of these figures you are reporting are straight from the government's mouth. Social Security, I believe that's running out. Is it 2033?
They keep moving the target, but they
They
say
keep moving it
like
like
10
closer because
years.
I remember when it was
Yeah,
2035, and then I feel like each year.
yeah. Yeah. So I think, and this is one of the themes that I'm probably most interested in just from my background is more education based. So, the as a former financial advisor, the experience of like people being interested in financial services is not common, right? Like it's a very rational kind of thought process for people when most people's approach to money is more emotional. Like I would argue the vast majority is more emotional.
You may when people buy at the top during the bull
Uh,
market coin.
no, I'm talking more just like if you want to make a meaningful difference for people, well, I think one of the best ways that you can do it is through personal finance education. But we're not taught this at all. So like you can go to college and we're living through this right now where people debt finance a $200,000 master degree for a master of physical therapy that'll pay you 70 to 100 grand a year or so, in
It's
theory.
actually why I didn't get my PhD in psychology. I'm like, this
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah. So there you go. You've got a use case
Yeah.
for it. But it's not, none of this is taught, right? So like they might throw a course at you in high school and maybe a little in college, even if like, so I'm a finance major. I didn't really learn much about personal finance. I knew how to price derivatives, but who needs to know the Black-Scholes model, right? Like it's not applicable unless you're going to go be like a derivatives trader. So
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't recall the education system teaching me anything about finance. I feel like the majority of what I learned was, involved classes I took in college that I had to choose to take and
yeah,
just self-taught, blockchain, this whole industry really got me, deep into finance as well. But yeah, I do believe the public education system should not only just have finance curriculum, but they need to start, Bitcoin curriculum. Like, yeah.
so my point here is what I'm most interested to hopefully see something happen. And I think we're now at this point because you're going to loop in AI to this as well and VR and, max personalization, all this stuff. But it seems like there's an opportunity to, really teach people personal finance in a way that doesn't feel like you're reading a college textbook. So like you're, in an immersive environment, you're like starting a business or doing something you've always wanted to do. And you're like learning how money works and contracts and all these things. And you wouldn't, ideally, I don't think you'd even know what's happening.
Mhm.
It's a game essentially, right? Like, which is
I
like,
think you make an excellent point. Isn't that why I think the majority of everyday people aren't even interested in cryptocurrency or because it's finance and
yeah,
it's practical. I think we're gonna see more adoption of this technology from the GameFi space or even
mhm,
the decentralized social media space, which I think is wild too. But I
yeah,
don't think the
friend
majority
that
of
tech.
a friend tech, yeah. Could you
Yeah.
talk about friend tech or
I caught it as a story. I don't know really much of anything about it.
Farcaster? Have you been following Farcaster is a really big thing right
Okay.
now. So with Farcaster, it's a decentralized social media protocol that I personally think it might be the killer app in the social blockchain space. So
Oh,
now people are embedding interactive applications into social media posts. So,
okay.
like,
Got it. Yeah.
imagine and I'm gonna use some of the examples of what people are building right now on this social media platform, but, like, imagine if your tweet allowed people to order Girl Scout cookies, or if you had a
Yeah.
tweet that allowed people to play a game of chess.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
People are actually programming interactive experiences into, like, social media posts themselves, which I think is
Yeah.
really wild. I think the whole decentralized social media space is wild in general. So, I mean, right now we have all these these walled X, which used to be Twitter and Facebook, and all the data you create are not only owned by those providers, but you have to ask Facebook permission to access your data and use their services. Whereas in the blockchain space, your what they call social graph actually follows you. So what's nice about that is think of the individuals who had maybe created a following of 1 million people on YouTube, but then they're deplatformed and they lose everything. Well, the great
Yeah.
thing about these blockchain-based social media platforms is that, all that work you did to build your following follows you across, across applications. And
Yeah.
you could actually, yeah, I love, I love talking about it. I've only used so I use I'm sorry going down a random rabbit hole here, but it's called mirror.xyz. It's a Web3 publishing platform that I just
Okay.
blog articles, but they're
o-
NFTs and they're hosted on the Arweave, which is similar
Okay.
to like the IPFS Filecoin. That's just another decentralized storage platform. But
Sure.
it's just really wild that people can, like, collect your blog posts since they're NFTs and, then you get access to their wallet, and you could do marketing campaigns using wallet addresses, and such a paradigm shift that I'm sure not only myself, you and I were so deep in the space and we're still trying to like wrap our head around it. I mean, I can't imagine the
Yeah,
everyday
no.
person, but
The the fun thing about being in the space is that I learn about new things all the time from talking to people. Like, so that, this is new for me. I was supposed to have on a guy this morning for my actual first podcast of the year. He runs a DeFi futures exchange that is like merging TradFi and DeFi. Basically, you'll be able to white label this protocol and JP Morgan could plug it in and route all their futures trading order flow to this thing is what I understand, which is just like nuts. Like there's so much going on.
yeah, I love that. I know there's a new token standard that allows you to basically, what is it, program KYC into it? I
Oh,
can't
I'm
think of the
sure.
year.
Yeah, I'm
Do you,
sure.
you know what I'm talking about? I can't think.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm blanking right now, but yes. So you can make sure that the proper market participants are accessing the product, and it's still all DeFi, which
Yeah.
love.
It's going to be interesting. And I personally think so I was reading some Coinbase 2024 themes thing about sort of adoption and what could get us there on like a mass level. Cause like you and I and other people interested in the space are financially inclined,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. Right. That's why NFTs
Friend
are
tech.
kind
People are like, oh, cool, friend tech. I
yeah.
have a share, and it gives me access to this influencer here.
Yeah. Or like the NFT thing, right? If you're an artist and you've got, a piece of art or a like music and you want to own your streaming rights and, set up, like it's just, that's a real use case for not financial people, you know?
Yes, but the boring
Um,
financial people like us.
yeah. And I think when and where that happens, it's going to be really interesting. Like, I think what it is that gets people into sort of that next gen sort of crypto Web3 adoption. Like one thing I constantly think about is just digital identity and ownership, which you were kind of touching on before about your videos or blog posts or whatever. Like if you're deplatformed by YouTube, your revenue just disappears overnight. But if you flip the product and ownership structure so that you own and control everything that you create and people get access to it based on essentially your parameters,
Mhm.
like I'm surprised we haven't seen more around that just yet. Like, I don't know why we haven't seen like a crypto YouTube just pop off.
There are a bunch of them, but that's the issue. There's the network effect. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I still do most of my LinkedIn. I'm still using traditional social media platforms because that's where everybody is, right? Whether it's your family
Yeah.
members, your best friends and colleagues.
Yeah.
HSBC, they're actually dabbling in, they use the Polygon ID software development kit to create a digital identity for, yeah, for the HSBC actually did. You probably saw they were tokenizing gold. There was this month where HSBC, they just had a new article in the media every week about what they were doing in the blockchain space.
Yeah. The financial services companies are looking at it from that tokenization thing because you chop things up, you sell them, you collect fees. Is basically the idea.
I think digital
Um,
ID, fractional tokenization.
yeah, yeah, it'll be. I'm curious about the ID thing from like multiple perspectives. So like the AI thing that we're living through right now, right? Like you can deep fake, crazy things
But you could use
easier than
blockchain to authenticate whether that's real or not. You could, like,
exactly.
embed. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, you beat me to it. So like I was telling my wife about this and she's not like us. But I was like, it's kind of ironic that like we have this AI deep fake stuff that can like really be awful if you use it in the wrong way. Like I mean, Taylor Swift got on the wrong side of AI image generation in the last couple of
Did that
weeks.
have 3 or 4 million views before it got taken down?
I'm sure it had more than that. And if you think about what it could do for politicians or CEOs or people in the public or, there's a million ways this tech can be used in a bad way, but, the
National
potential is great.
security, I'm concerned about the national security of, what if you have foreign adversaries just bombarding our country with
Yeah.
myths and
Images,
disinformation?
videos, all sorts of things. And people are emotional,
Mhm.
but, the way to validate something is going to be through some sort of NFT that you own that is tied directly to you and your device or whatever. But then the flip side of that too is like, do you really want like governments issuing digital identities that they can probably, if governments issue them, can take or restrict, you know? So
So
we're like,
maybe we need a like a global standard, which I know we have a few, but just a global standard for open source identity because it shouldn't
yeah,
be owned by
yeah,
one
yeah,
entity, right?
exactly. Like, and Sam Altman's got his orb and like the world coin and stuff that he's kind of talking to, but everyone's like, I don't know about this. It doesn't seem very open
Wasn't that banned
source.
in a few countries because he was exploiting he was
I
paying people in WorldCoin, I believe, for the biometric data of their eye. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting approach to like the global identity problem, but I don't know enough about it to, I guess, pontificate on it, but it
Apple
seems
Vision
like,
Pro, that got released since we spoke last. Right.
yeah, yeah, there's been some good memes about that too.
Still
Uh,
looks like scuba gear, and I am concerned about. I'm curious how this will affect human development, right?
oh well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, my daughter's going on 10 months, and she sees our phones, she knows that they're important. She doesn't really know why, but it's kind of shocking to see her already get attuned to the fact that this thing is cool and I want it, you know? And it's only gonna be like her life is gonna be very different than ours.
But to stay competitive in the job market and relevant, kids have to learn how to use and leverage these tools, right? They need to
Oh,
be
yeah.
for better and for worse. They need to be, playing with artificial intelligence. They need to be eventually putting on that Apple Vision Pro. Yeah, I'm
Yep.
curious. I will say, I loved Apple back in the day, especially I had like one of the first iPod generations and I fell out of love with Apple for a while, but then I saw this Apple Vision Pro and I'm like, they finally invented something since Steve Jobs died. Like something that I
Yeah.
thought captured that Apple magic that I thought they had back in the day. I think augmented reality finally has a chance of maybe penetrating. I mean, once that $3,500 price tag gets decreased. Yeah, I know. But
And,
it's the
true
first
Apple fashion.
generation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
eventually it'll probably look sexier, it'll be cheaper, and I think there's potential here.
I mean, it's all going that way. I mean, it's kind of shocking, like, how these sci-fi movies that or stories, you grow up with have ultimately kind of played out in real life. Like, Ready Player One came out, what, 5 years ago or something? And, like, there's a very real chance that, like, my daughter will grow up in that world. She could disappear into a digital realm and just be, her life could just happen there, right? Um,
That's where she'll do her work, right?
I mean, yeah, I don't know, it's gonna be odd. Like,
It could
I
increase productivity in ways we can't fathom yet. What I do love about AI is that it gives anybody the opportunity to, it gives everybody, if you don't have the capital or the resources, one person can do everything. I personally, I'm a photographer, but I'm horrible at painting and drawing, but using a text to graphic generator, I can create graphics I want. So
yeah, yeah,
it-
it's
that
and just going full circle, like, the technology coming together, it's gonna be really interesting. So, like, what is that next thing that brings together AI, augmented reality, VR, blockchain? Like, what is that thing that catches fire? Like the gaming world, you touched on it earlier, is super interesting. Like, I just saw something the other day that Disney's investing like several billion into like
the Epic Games.
Epic. Yeah, thank you. And just to create, Disney and Epic, I don't know. It's going to be super, super interesting. I think
Yeah,
we're on this like exponential sort of acceleration right now. I kind of feel it like 10 years from now, the world is just going to be totally different.
Ah, we sound like those old people, aren't we? Oh, the music nowadays is
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
Comedy isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, shoot. I mean, I don't know if you listen to Legion of Skanks. It's a comedy podcast, but they had this episode recently where they uploaded all their comedy over the last like 5, 10 years. They uploaded like thousands of hours of their work. And then they let the AI basically create a minute of their stand up. And they were surprised at how good it was. So who knows?
Yeah, I look forward to seeing what the future will bring. All right. Well, for anybody that wants to see all the lovely podcasts Mr. Ben Keady has, please check out the link below. Again, I'm actually really grateful you came on the show today, and I'm glad to be your first. And any parting thoughts you want to say to the world?
No, I really appreciate it, Alex. I mean, I'm happy to help wherever I can. If people are interested in, kind of merger of TradFi and DeFi, that's really what my podcast is about. So it's very financial services oriented, but we do often get into conversations like this too. So
Yeah, I thought we were only going to discuss finance today, and we went down some great rabbit holes, but that's why I'm always happy to speak with
yeah,
you. All right,
cool.
everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Peace.